Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends, and thanks to our presenting sponsor, the Coffee Consultants Mastermind Group by Mapper Forward. If you're considering becoming a coffee consultant or growing your consulting business and want to join a small mastermind group, head to the show notes, click on the link, and read more about it today. Today on the podcast, we are discussing what's going on with the coffee supply chain. Now, there is some things that you need to be aware of that are happening in some regions. And this by no means is a detailed summary of what's happening in every origin. This is just a couple of things that are coming to light at the moment that we definitely know about that will absolutely affect the price of coffee moving forward and the supply of coffee moving forward. This will be a very challenging time moving forward for the whole value chain, for producers, for exporters, importers, for roasters, for cafes, for consumers, for everybody. And here's why. Just a bit of background on how coffee is traded. There are two kinds of coffee. Let's keep it simple. There's coffee that's traded that is considered commodity coffee, commodity grade coffee, so below an 80. And then there is coffee that's considered specialty coffee. Now, commodity coffee is traded on the C market, what we like to call the C market. It's a coffee's futures market, and that price that the market operates on is set by both sellers and buyers on that market. Now, you don't have to be in the coffee industry to trade on the C market or the coffee futures market. Speculators, who are people who buy and sell they buy low, sell high, and make a profit. That is a thing that's allowed to happen. I don't agree with it. I don't like it. It really fucks with the system, but it's allowed to happen. Now, that's one way of buying coffee. The other way is the high-end specialty market, or everything that's above 85. Now, that doesn't mean that 85 coffees don't end up selling on the commodity market. Sometimes they do. A lot of high-scoring coffees through the pandemic ended up going through the commodity market simply because there weren't enough people or labor to pick it, to get it to the standard that it needed to be. So it ended up just going on the commodity market. Okay, so in general, there's two ways that coffee gets traded. It can either be through the futures market or it can be through relationship buying. Now, what we're starting to see historically in most recent history, the C market has been very, very low. What we are currently seeing is that the C market, which previously was as low as 46 cents per pound in the last few years, is now at $1.60, which is still nowhere close to what most producers need it to be profitable. But still, that's a bit of a record number for recent history. It's not a bit of a record number, it is a record number for recent history. And so, again, we are, as we've spoken about in recent episodes, this is a sign of inflation. And the reason the market's going up is because of an issue with supply. Now, this leads to the other part of what's going on with the supply chain and why it's an issue. You may have recently heard about things on social media like what's going on in Colombia. And we are seeing political and pandemic issues starting to show the effects of how they are washing out or playing out in the supply chain. Now, in Colombia, we have a situation, a serious political situation that has affected the whole country. The government decided that they were going to impose a tax. There was an uprising. The government withdrew the tax, but now there is political unrest and civil unrest in all of Colombia. A result of that is that they can't get coffee out of Colombia. Colombia, I don't know why I said it as two separate words there, but Colombia is the third largest coffee producer in the world. Now, if we can't get coffee out of Colombia, and it's the third largest producer in the world, what we expect would be the flow-on effect of that is the price of the C market, or the speculators, particularly in the C market, once they get wind of this news, will start to accelerate the way that they trade. They will expect that the supply of coffee worldwide from one of the biggest producing countries in the world is held back. And so the supply is not going to be able to keep up with the demand, which means that the C market should go up, which would fare really well for producers because all of the other pricing is based off what this not all, the vast majority of pricing is based on what the C market is. And then they add little bits onto that to account for extra things like organic coffee and specialty coffee, etc., etc. So if this C market price goes up and is driven by speculators, that artificially inflates the price as a reaction to the demand and the supply. Unfortunately, we're not going to know how this is going to play out because on top of that, you've got neighboring countries in the region that are also being affected by COVID. One example of that is Guatemala. Guatemala is also experiencing issues because of some political decisions that were recently made. They can't get coffee out of the country either. And so you've got supply. There's plenty of coffee in Colombia. There's plenty of coffee in Guatemala. They just can't get it out of the countries. Now, if you add to that there is a situation with shipping companies whereby there is so much cargo that needs to be shipped around the world that the price of shipping is out of this world outrageous right now. That is also going to drive the cost of coffee up. So we are experiencing a very, very interesting time in the supply chain with the collision of a number of crises happening all at the same time. You have a coffee price crisis that's been going on for a few years. Add on top of that the real life consequences of a pandemic in a lot of these lower socioeconomic countries. And add on top of that the ramifications of a real issue with supply and demand that's driving inflation around the world, and the consequence of printing too much money that didn't align with GDP, gross domestic product, in any of the countries that were printing all of this money. So we are in for a very, very interesting time for the coffee supply chain moving forward. And you should know about it, which is why we're talking about it here. So I hope this has been helpful. Please talk to your producer friends that you are buying from. Please talk to your suppliers. Spot coffee, I anticipate spot coffee is going to become a real problem. So once again, as we've spoken about in a previous episode, please lock in your supply chain as quickly as you can. Don't get left out in the cold. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.